Ariel, listen to me. The human world, it's a mess.
Hey guys! Alright, thought you might like that Little Mermaid intro, since we will be using the Little Mermaid as our example for today. Hello everyone! We are going to be learning this week about Max Luthie's 5 principles of the fairy tale. So that's kind of our goal for whatever week we are on for e-learning. I have lost track. So how this is going to work, here's what I would recommend. If you want to grab paper, maybe a notebook of some sort to kind of jot down a few notes on the 5 different principles that we're going to go over today. Please do not write down every single thing that is on this PowerPoint. That would be way too much. But a couple notes here and there will not only keep your mind engaged, but will also help you remember the information more than just listening to it. So we're going to dive right in. Another Little Mermaid pun. Also, if at any point you hear some dogs barking in the background, that's my pug Otis, and I'm just going to keep on moving even if she interrupts. So here we go. All right, to start us off, we have one-dimensionality. This is the first principle that we're going to cover. Now, this is essentially where all creatures live together in the same world. Humans and animals can communicate. That's not weird or anything. Magic and bravery are normal, and so are the impossible and miraculous things that people can do. None of it seems strange. That's the first principle. And some examples in The Little Mermaid would be such as like the sea creatures or mer people, and humans, they can all communicate. There's no like special device that changes their voice so that way they can talk to one another. Ariel's best friend is a flounder, a crab, a seagull. It's all totally fine. Obviously, there's lots of magic in The Little Mermaid, spells being put here and there, things happening to her voice, things like that. And then also, that last piece, the bravery piece. It seems like in a lot of fairy tales, bravery is just kind of expected. Well, that's because it's one of the principles. So initially, she's approaching the witch, turning into a human and going into the human world. She's like gung-ho about all those things with really no regard to the imminent danger that's surrounding her. Also with Prince Eric fighting Ursula at the end, no one really seems too concerned about how dangerous these scenarios are. It's a fairy tale, and that is the first principle, one-dimensionality. All right, we're going to move on to the next one, Depthlessness. Now, this principle is talking all about how time and place do not actually matter. Characters rarely have specific or unusual names. For example, they'll be called the princess or the prince, the child, etc. Or they might have nicknames such as like Beauty and the Beast, things like that. Those characters do have names, but we know them more by their nicknames, if that makes sense. So, for example, in The Little Mermaid, we have far beneath the ocean waves. There's not really any more information on where this mermaid area is except for that, or in the land of the mer people. We just kind of assume, oh, it's somewhere, and we don't ask questions. We have obviously names like Ariel, King Triton. Also consider like what a Triton is. We've got a little bit of like mythology being pulled in there, which is kind of cool. Prince Eric. I mean, Eric doesn't even have a last name or anything like that. The king, things like that. Even her friends, like poor Flounder. He is a flounder. That is probably the most basic name he could have been given. So things like that. Depthlessness, that would be the second principle that is part of this whole fairy tale genre. All right, let's move on to our third one, abstract style. So abstract style refers to the props that are used in fairy tales, which may include colors, precious metals, and their color and glimmer, castles and their inhabitants, cities and towns, dwarfs and elves, numbers, especially the numbers 2, 3, 7, and 12, magical animals and plants, songs, witches, evil stepmothers and stepsisters, and beginning and endings. Everything is just kind of abstract and flowy, which is perfect for The Little Mermaid because you've got like the ocean waves and things like that. So for example, in The Little Mermaid, we've got, the undersea palace, Prince Eric's castle, her grotto with all of his treasures, I mean, look at this stuff. Isn't it neat? Wouldn't you think my collection's complete? I mean, I could go on and on with that song. Ursula's Sea Cave, All the Colors of the Sea. You know, we've got the Seven Sisters, including her, 3 Days to Get the Kiss. I mean, all of these things are just like very like magical and fantastical, if you will, very abstract. So abstract style is that third principle that Max Luthi has deemed part of our fairy tale genre. Okay, number 4. Isolation and a bond with all nature and its creatures. So this principle relates to how in most fairy tales, the hero or heroine finds himself or herself in a position of being totally isolated and alone, which is very common in a lot of the fairy tale, either movie, show, stories that you have experienced. Keep in mind that the person can be all like alone totally at home or just very lonely and maybe surrounded by people. Both of those scenarios are totally fine. It usually doesn't last long though. So for example, Ariel, I mean, she's got, you know, her fish, that's her friend, the seagull, crab. I mean, she's not like, you know, drowning, if you will, another pun in Friends. She's alone with all her neat treasures. You know, we've got this boating accident and she rescues Eric. She's alone when the eels come to tempt her, alone in the castle. I don't know. It just is like an example of just this extreme isolation that she's feeling in various times throughout, you know, the movie, which we can definitely see in other fairy tales too, especially like Rapunzel. I mean, she's all alone in that high tower. So things like that. That would be our 4th principle of isolation and a bond with all nature and creatures. This also makes me think of like Snow White. I mean, is there a character more bonded with all the lovely creatures of the earth than Snow White? No, she's awesome. Okay, let's move on. 5th principle. Sublimation and worldliness. This principle is the meaning, or when you think of a fairy tale, the meaning that usually symbolizes a real life experience. You can apply it to things that happen in our world today. It could teach a lesson. Worldliness refers to the fact that justice in today's world can be found in the fairy tale. Usually the bad are punished and the good are rewarded. Most fairy tales end happily nowadays. Yes, you do have some of the Grimm's fairy tales that were very grim, but most of the fairy tales today have this, you know, good conquers all attitude. So here are some examples from The Little Mermaid. Obviously, Ursula gets what she deserves at the end and dies in the Disney version. If you're looking at the Hans Christian Andersen version, we've got this lesson of self-sacrifice as Ariel chooses to become sea foam instead of killing the prince. Whoa, what's going on in that version? But notice how we still have this like lesson of self-sacrifice. Some possible lessons from the Disney version. Parents and kids need to communicate better. I mean, if she really thinks that kids don't get in trouble up on land when they have 2 legs, no. Parents and kids always need to communicate. Dangers of running away, never a good idea. But then it also reflects our world. She's pretty self-absorbed in what she wants, and like I said in a previous principle, she does not really care about the dangers she is going to face. So she's kind of pursuing it at any cost. You could see that mirrored in real life examples as well. Pretty focused on superficial and outward appearances. See, I told you at some point Otis would come in with some nice barks. Just ignore that. Outward beauty is all it takes to capture the guy. Lack of respect for authority, value in boldness, initiative, and pursuit of happiness. So those are all things that can be reflected in our real world. I figured out how to pause the slideshow. We should be good now without any other Otis outbursts. So, sublimation and worldliness, essentially this means that what happens in fairy tales, yes, they are fantastical. Yes, they are, outside of any realm of what we would ever find ourselves in, but they do reflect our world and some of the lessons that we can learn from the stories. So, those are the 5 principles of Max Luthi. He was a folklore theorist. Tomorrow, I'm going to have a document that has all of these lovely principles written in German. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce them, but just so you're aware, you're going to see that tomorrow. So get excited. All right, let's chat about the next piece. Now you try. So you are going to choose a common fairy tale, and I just want you to think of 2 to 3 traits for each principle. So 2 to 3 for one-dimensionality, depthlessness, abstract style, isolation and a bond with all of nature's and its creatures, and then sublimation and worldliness. You will be submitting an actual page tomorrow on Canvas. So don't necessarily worry about where should I type this or where should I write this. Just kind of jot it down maybe on the notes page that you've been taking during this presentation. And then tomorrow you'll actually transfer it to a page that you will submit on Canvas. If you are like me and that makes you stressed, go check out the assignment for tomorrow. It's already posted. You can see what that template is, and if you want to save yourself some time, you could even start it early. Totally up to you. You can use whatever fairy tale you want. I'm going to leave that in your hands. If you are not sure what fairy tale to start with or where to go with that, Disney movies are always a great place to start. Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, I mentioned Snow White earlier. All of those are, great places to begin if you are thinking about these 5 principles. I do want you to also remember that every week when I assign different assignments, you have until Monday to complete them. So yes, this is being officially submitted on Wednesday, but you don't actually have to get it done until Monday. So if you're like, man, I have been wanting a reason to watch Beauty and the Beast, here's your chance. You have quite a few days to get this in. So don't feel stressed about having to do it the same day as Wednesday. So that is how you're going to be practicing this and kind of applying it to fairy tales that you love and know really, really well. That's how we're going to be practicing it. Now, I want us to think a little bit about the future. So, while we're reading Princess Bride, this falls into the fairy tale category. All of these principles are found within the book, which is what makes that's what makes the book so awesome. It's hilarious, it's satirical, and it has these principles in it. So it would be a great thing for you to start annotating for these principles when you come across them. If you don't annotate anything else while you are reading this book, when you come across an example of abstract style, underline it, label it, explain it in the margins. If you come across something where we've got one-dimensionality, great. Again, highlight it, underline it. Just make sure you're marking it somewhere. If margins are too small, you're not one that likes to mark up your books, I totally understand. Keep track of them in that study guide, the optional study guide. In the margins, maybe you like to type. If you want to create a note on your iPad, totally up to you. You do you, whatever works best, but definitely start thinking about where are these found in The Princess Bride. As we conclude this book in May, I am going to be expecting you to have at least 7 examples for each of the 5 principles. So that means 35 examples total if you want to get that math in there. It's a great idea to start marking these now. So that way, at the end of May, you're not like, oh, I got to go find 35. Maybe it's just 1 or 2. So that would be my recommendation. Not only are these, fairy tale principles important for us to know because we can recognize them and see how they translate to our world and different stories that we're exposed to, but also I want you to apply it to the novel that we're actually reading. So some of you are visual people and maybe want an example of what a tracker might look like for the different principles while you're reading The Princess Bride. Make something like this. Again, you do you. I'm not necessarily too concerned on how you are tracking them, but making sure that you just pay attention to those and keep your eyes peeled for them while you are reading. Hopefully, I did not speak too fast, and if I did, hopefully you can go back and look at the different pieces of this PowerPoint to kind of refresh your memory about the different types of principles. And if you have questions, please email me through Canvas. I've got a pretty quick turnaround with that. So hopefully I can help you with anything that you might need. I miss you all. It is sad to be home and away from you, and I wish we were all together in school. But it's okay. We will all make it through this lovely e-learning time. But like I said, if you feel like you're struggling, please reach out to me. I want to be able to help and make this as seamless and simple as possible. I hope you're enjoying The Princess Bride. I'm enjoying it. I'm rereading it right now, which is exciting as well. And I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day. Miss you all. Let me know if you have questions. See you later.